What is your biggest advice you could give to these students that like are now considering? And please don't give me the idea of like come to my
My
class because
program.
again, yeah, because this
No,
is
it
too
wouldn't
obvious.
be.
But what,
No,
what
by
would
the
you
way,
recommend them? What is your advice that you would give them full-heartedly?
I think the biggest challenge for any person, any young person, is to find what he or she is good at and what he or she is passionate about. I think that's the hardest thing to find. And I think when you're very young, you choose your majors or whatever you study in university many times not based on that.
Welcome to this very first episode of this brand new podcast with Dr. Yael Hadass, who is the academic head of economics at the double major BA degree of business administration and economics at the Reichman University. Welcome to this very first episode, Yael. It's so great to have you.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
So in this very first episode, we try to get a little bit of an understanding of who you are, what are your visions for the future of our dear students, and how you are seeing the future of learning in general. So let's get first started with your background. Where are you coming from? What brought you here?
Oh, wow. That's a really big question. So if you want to start with my background, I always like to start with my education. So I started, by the way, when I was very young, studying double major BA in economics and English literature.
Okay.
That's a surprise for many people. And then I did a master's in economics. Both of them were in Tel Aviv University, which is my alma mater and a very wonderful place for me. And then when I finished my master's, I was actually very young. And I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. I had an aspiration to actually go to the business world. But I felt like I have a lot of time because I finished young. And I thought, why won't I do a PhD? I did not really understand what was a PhD. I thought it was another degree. And I started in Tel Aviv University. And then I learned that actually we are very much encouraged to study abroad. And I had a sort of a childhood dream that if ever I'm going to study abroad, I want to study at Harvard. Because I read about it, that's the best school and international and everything. It was sort of like a dream to me. So once it started, I started to think, okay, how do I get there? And that was a whole process of, a different podcast. And at the end, I did succeed to be admitted there for a 5-year program of PhD in political economy and government, which was actually a PhD that was given by several schools in Harvard, the School of Economics, the Kennedy School of Government, and the Government Department, which is sort of political science. So it was very, very diverse, very interdisciplinary, I would say. And I did it for 5 years. And then I learned that actually a PhD is not a degree. It's actually a profession. And exactly like a lawyer or a doctor, it's actually something you learn to do, which is learn to be a researcher. And after I finished these 5 years, which were, of course, fascinating and, enriching in every aspect, I had to decide really what I want to do when I grow up. And I actually decided that, since I originally wanted to go to business, I do want to go to business. And I decided also that I want to return to Israel. I also was abroad with my husband and I had a baby there. And I decided that, we want to live here close to the family and so on. So we came home and I actually joined the family business. That was the original plan was actually to go there. And that's why I started this whole thing in the beginning with the English literature and so on. And I actually joined my family business, which is called Schocken Publishing House. It's actually very old. Started in 1931 in Germany. And I worked there along with my mother, who was the publisher, and that's another story. And along the time I became actually the general manager of the publishing house, I always maintained my ties to the academia, and I used to teach one course per semester. I actually wanted to, maintain my ties. I have a lot of appreciation to academia, and I wanted always to be part of it. And I did it. And first, it was only one course per semester. And as things progressed, I got offers to do more courses. And I sort of succeeded because my mother is still in the business. I succeeded really to balance. And therefore, I think that, when I came to IDC, also an academic head, I came with like 15 years of experience in business, plus a lot of academic knowledge. So it's actually a great combination. I always feel that I'm like the right person in the right place in terms of the business and economics, because I have a strong mastery of both. And then I got this offer that was actually one of my biggest, turned to be a really big passion, was to lead the Business Administration and Economics double major degree, which is actually a joint program of the business school and the economics school. And the economics is actually, I'm in charge on all the academics in economics. The business school people are in charge on the business courses, but I'm also in charge on the management of the program, especially all the, deciding who gets into the program, and doing a lot of things for them that, help them to prepare for their career. So, and I see it also as, actually, it's not only just, a job that you do it, it's actually a complete passion and mission, because I feel like this is like the Zionism at its best. I have people from all over the world coming in, and we give them actually the key to live in Israel if they want. So that's one thing that we do. But the other thing is that we also, in terms of vision of the program, I want to have my students have all the possibilities. So basically, they have to be able to be admitted either to the best programs in the world for masters or PhDs, and they also have to have like all the options available in the business world for them to capture. Today in Israel, the startup
to really succeed.
Startup is the big industry.
The place where the young guys, I guess, want to be.
It's where the money is. Let's say it, fair and square. But everybody goes to startups. But but any industry, the beauty of economics and business administration degree is that it's very open. You can do so many things, both in the business sectors and in the government. So. So before we go more into degree, I mean, I think it's probably one of the key learnings already for our listeners, especially the students that are listening. Like your pathway to success is not always so linear. Sometimes you plan one thing and something else happens. I think this is really important to know. If you see your professor up there, you say like, oh, these guys have all figured out. But I guess like it's a process for everybody. And even if you're young, you have all of the doors open. So that's very important to know. I agree with you.
So let's quickly talk about the degree before we go much deeper in your philosophy. Tell me quickly, what is your ultimate goal? You mentioned the financial aspect of it, but I'm sure there's much more than just making sure that the students have a high salary. What do you want to teach them in your degree?
Wow, what a great question. I was not prepared for this question. I'm so happy you asked it. So you see, I think economics, more than I should first explain that the way I see in the academics in this, and this is how I also explain it to the students, I always tell them, listen, economics will tell you will teach you how to think. And business courses will be the practical tools that you will get. And both of them together will prepare you to the labor market. And when you are coming from the economic side, not from the business side, you actually have a much bigger view. So, and what do I mean by that? You don't see only, the bottom line of where you made a profit. You actually see the whole market. You can see both markets of separate goods, and you can actually see the whole economy, and you can see the government, and you can see a lot of problems that when you are a business person, you don't see, I think. Excuse me if I'm wrong here, but at least in the training, I don't think they put so much focus on it, and where we do. And that is all kind of social problems that are actually related to economics outcomes. So for instance, our students have this amazing seminar at the third year where they meet every week someone who was involved in policy making, in economic policy making, because the policy is actually something that affects biggest part of the society. And basically, we teach them to first not understand how the tools help, but also how complex are the problems, and also what should be the values. Because, for instance, if you want to, if on one hand, economic models say, let the market do whatever the market does, but then, it does create a lot of, sometimes it can create poverty, and it create inequality, and it create a lot of things. And then how you would want to mend that, and what are the costs and benefits of everything. So it's much much wider view, I would think, because it forces you to also think about the social aspects
Right.
of the economics, and not only about, bottom line is, did we make money or not?
Yes, we make a profit or not. But tell me, I mean, like, I like to get very practical, especially on my own podcast. But maybe you can tell me, like, who was one of the policymakers that you had over? What was the topic about?
So I can tell you, only last week we had Dr. Nadine Trachtenberg, who was Dr. Nadine Boudot-Trachtenberg, I should say the full name. And she was the deputy governor of the Bank of Israel just 2 years ago. She finished her role there.
Yep.
And we, and that's actually something that, you don't get to see too often. And basically, she taught us how the central bank viewed the policy tools in order to, first, before the corona, for instance, what was the problems before the corona in terms of the interest rates and prices and things like that. And then in the corona, what they did in order to help the economy continue move despite all the lockdowns and everything. What can be done, what are the issues, and so on. So the students basically had to look not only on, the interest rate, which is this, bizarre number, but also the impact on the GDP, on the employment, on the, welfare of people. So that's one thing. For instance, another really fascinating speaker that I'm always so grateful that he comes from Jerusalem is Professor Joseph Zeira, who is an expert in economic growth and macro.
Yes.
And he likes to talk about poverty and about, the interaction between the government involvement in the economy and the inequality. So that's another thing that makes you think. All of a sudden, our students, for instance, told me that they never thought that poverty is so multidimensional.
Right.
You have to take care of education, you have to take care of health, you have to take care of, public housing or whatever. It's so many things. It's not enough just to give people money. So
yeah,
anyway.
It's all a circle and it's all interconnected with each other. I mean, like, as a host, my duty is to ask you polarizing questions that might be, difficult for your students to ask you, but I can ask you basically whatever I want. So one of the questions that I have, when you look as an outsider, deciding about which degree you want to take, then, a lot of it sounds like out of the 60s, 70s models that have been around for so many years. And you say it's everything is very nice and good, but, is it really applicable today in the business world what we actually learning here and studying here at the Reichman University? Tell me, what would you say to those people who say leave me alone with this all academic stuff and let me just go into the business world? There's entrepreneurs out there who have never went anywhere. Mark Zuckerberg dropped out of Harvard. So tell me, what would you say to these people who say the academic world has something to offer for someone who wants to make it big into the business world?
Great question as well. So I can tell you the following. First, if you're Mark Zuckerberg and you're going to invent Facebook next year, so just go and do it. Forget about academics. You're going to make millions anyway.
Yes.
My blessing into you to first, go and do your thing. What I can say is the following. I think there's a problem with expectations, I would say. Many students think that, when they come to academia, then when they go to the business world, they do exactly what they're told in academia, and they have these tools.
That's what I thought, exactly.
Exactly. And that is actually, if you ask me, quite wrong. I don't think it's the role of academia to give you that practical tools to do in your first job. The role of academia is to prepare you for your whole career, which is different. In the past, 30, 40 years ago, if people, you ask people why they go to academia, they would tell you, we want to expand our knowledge.
Right.
That's what they would tell you. They would not tell you, I want because I want to have a job. And today there's these new expectations that academia is to prepare you for the job, maybe even for your first job. And many people get disappointed when they say that, okay, I just finished my degree and not everybody's running and, recruiting me and whatever, even though today it is the case that, it's a market that is actually very hot and students do get recruited. By the way, my students get recruited so early that even I'm amazed. But I would say that academia is actually preparing you for your whole career to take good decisions in many points where you as a young person cannot even imagine. You cannot even foresee it now. We sort of the grown-ups and experienced ones know that you are going to encounter these things, and we give you a lot of tools that the problem is that you would be able to appreciate them sometimes only 10 years after you studied.
Right.
But I do think there's a huge there's a huge difference between people who do have academic training and people who don't. I think some people are born with this gift, like Mark Zuckerberg, that can start businesses and do without it. But this is absolutely not the majority, and this is also is seen in the data. So I can even show you, this is a podcast, so I was not prepared, but I can actually show you that the data today says that there's a gap between people along all the years of your career, from being very young to your retirement. There is a gap in wages between people who did academia and people who do not, people who have only high school degree and people who do not. So I think, if you want to, be sure that you are well equipped to have high wages in the future, I don't think not having academia is an option.
Right.
That's my personal view based on the data, based on these things. Right. The problem is, by the way, that we don't know who we are. We don't know when we are young if we are Mark Zuckerberg or not. So sometimes you can also look at it as sort of an insurance. Once you did it, yes, you have something for you.
Mm-hmm. So I know you briefly mentioned about like where the big money lies these days, which is in startups, specifically here in Israel, where we are now on the edge between startup nation to scale up nation. I'm sure you heard about these terms. Tell me, how can the world of startups, especially, when you're in your daily grind and, things are getting tough, especially as a founder, and you say like, how can the academic world support startups in the crucial moments of growth?
That's a great question. By the way, I can tell you the only thing I do see, in practice every day is my students who are very active in startups and contributing a lot in their, very good human capital. Mm-hmm. So basically people come and work there. That's one thing. In terms of, all kind of, I would say, consulting and advice, I mean, definitely you can find maybe in the School of Entrepreneurship all kind of theories and, things that can definitely help startups from basically learning from experience of startups before them.
Right.
It's a sort of a growth process. And I can tell you another thing, that the academia is the only place where you have the time and resource to study it.
And
think. because if you really want to understand what happens in the startup world, you have to sort of examine big number of startups and draw conclusions. Mm-hmm. And we in the research world have the tools to do that. Right. Otherwise, what you do is that, a startup world without academia would say, okay, let's meet 5 founders and try to learn from them. But who says that these 5 founders represents really what's going on? Right. So the academia is actually with their research capabilities are able to study, big samples of companies, draw from their experience all kind of insights mm-hmm. that the one entrepreneur is not able to do.
So I think for the remaining time that we have left, I would really like to focus on everything that has changed in the last 24 months. I mean, like there's so much has happened. I mean, obviously globally, obviously in every industry, but I would say today we are focusing on the academic world. I mean, the things that have happened that I would say was unimaginable, I would say 3 years ago. Mm-hmm. So I think that is fascinating to hear kind of like your side. So the first thing I want to say, and I want to hear your take on this, is this idea of like the brand of a university. And back in the days, you go to Harvard because you can tell everybody I spent some time in Boston and I spent some time there. Like today, you can go on EDX, you can watch everything from anywhere in the world, which obviously helps poverty to mm-hmm. a certain degree. But again, like that obviously like kind of like commoditizes the whole idea of like where you're going and makes the brand even more important. So tell me, what are your thoughts on this, that this has changed, this idea of like, being able to kind of like attend every university from anywhere in the world?
Yeah, actually, I think we just were very, we got this sort of even gift, I would say. I mean, I wouldn't say, pandemic is a gift, but the pandemic allowed us...
We'll exclude the personal, physical...
No, we don't. We exclude the disease and,
yes,
all the bad
horrible
things that happened,
yes.
To so many people. And, of course, this is not... But one of the good outcomes that we received was sort of a natural experiment of the question whether you can just upload all the courses and just have everybody study online. And I think what we at least experienced, and here I do not have numbers that we did it worldwide, but at least I can tell you from my personal experience as being an academic head of a program and, overseeing both my students and the lecturers and everything. So here is my answer. I think universities still have a really big role in the fact that it's different experience to study from a tape than being in class and interacting with people. So it's just a different experience. And I think there's a room for both. So, if you are basically, was born in rural India and you have no money to go anywhere and you really want to have your education, which is the most important thing, at least in my opinion, to take you out, is actually a fantastic opportunity to do Coursera, do these online courses and educate yourself from afar. But I think there's nothing that replaces the human interaction between, the groups of students and the professors. I know that all of us longed to be on campus, even though many of us enjoy the fact that we don't need to run around like crazy and, suffer traffic. So there were a lot of good things about, doing it from home. But if I need to say what is better, absolutely better be in class.
But maybe we can just dig into this. Like, tell me what is so much better about like being, physically together. I mean, I can imagine. I mean, like, it's
it's
nice.
Fun, it's nice.
It's fun, and you can have drinks after school and stuff like this. But tell me, what is the academic and it's a like social benefit of being in the same room? In the academic world, obviously.
First, I think it's the interaction is very different. Like when I stand in front, right now I have 75 students in my entering class in economics. And what I do with them when I teach them introduction to macroeconomics is not just a class, it's a conversation. So basically, I ask them questions all the time and I have a lot of people participate. And if they don't participate, I actually beg them to participate because I don't think you can learn if you don't speak. I actually think I do not believe in passive learning, even though for few students it can work, but not for a whole class. So I actually ask them a lot of questions. People think, and that actually leads to a very big variety of opinions and ideas that you would not get if you're just a lecturer who basically, just shows from a textbook one opinion. And I can give a beautiful example. Just happened last week. I was teaching, for instance, demand function. And demand function is actually, for people who don't know, is actually sort of trying to associate the connection between the price of a good and how many units you can sell. How many units people would want to buy. And basically it sort of shows that, when the price is lower, obviously more people would be willing to pay, and therefore there would be more units demanded. So, and then I started to do with the class. Now, when you, from my experience, if you want to explain that to a class, it's actually, you sort of show them a line and people looked at you quite puzzled, I must say. Even though when I explain to you, it sounds okay, people get puzzled from the line. So what I do is I do an experiment. I actually tell them, I do a poll and I ask them how many people are willing to buy a cup of coffee in this price, in this price, in this price, in this price. And then sometimes I change the setting and I said, okay, now we have news that, coffee is really bad for you. So what do you think will happen? And we do the poll again and we see that in every price, less people are willing to buy the coffee. Now the question is why? And why and what determines this shift? So, if I just tell that to them, they look at me puzzled. I must say, I did it many times.
I remember.
You were my student. And then I ask different people in the class if they change their mind, if they actually change the quantity, if they agreed or not agreed to buy at the same price. And you get different answers because some people took this news very seriously and decided not to buy the coffee. And some people did not take it too seriously and actually, and therefore did not change their decision. And by this experience, you actually see the whole market in front of you. So this is something you cannot get from a tape. You can just all you would see was the lecturer drawing the curve and so on. And I can tell you that it really works. Like, I actually explain them, how markets work and all kinds of things like that. And I ask them, why can't we not solve world poverty? And there was a whole discussion, what's wrong about, why can't, all these, big countries not solving the problem of poverty? And there's a lot about incentives and, different interests and many things that is going on. And just a week later came to me student, he told me he thought about this problem and he actually read an article and he wanted to share with me how in this article they did refer to something we did in class and some things we don't.
Yes.
So, it's completely different experience. You can't really just say that, if not, I would just tell you, okay, why can't we solve the world poverty? A, because of this, B, because of this. It's just a different experience.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, like, there's this term of serendipity. So if you can speak to people, things come to your mind that you're much easier to share in a setting. And obviously, I mean, like, I don't have to tell you, but I guess it's the right moment to build a relationship with your classmates, with your professors. I think this is like something that lasts forever. If you're nurtured and you make sure that like you stay in touch with the people around you, you will see magic happens. So now as a host, there's one no-go that you should never do, which is like to ask two questions at the same time. I'm going to do it anyways now because I think it's the questions are very much connected, and I'm going to make sure you answer both of them because I want to talk to you about the future of learning. So I want to hear what your thoughts are, but I also want to hear about the future of universities. What is the university in a couple of years going to look like? And usually people, when they make the predictions, and they say like what next year is going to look like, that's very easy because I think you're very close to the market, so But let's talk about 10 years from now, 20 years from now, when no one knows. You don't know, I don't know, no one knows. But, what does your gut feeling say? How are we going to learn in the academic world in 10, 15 years from now, far away, where we really don't know, no one is going to blame you. And the second question is, what is the university? What is the role of the university going to be in 15, 20 years from now?
So I would imagine that we could better interact with the industry to sort of train students to understand the first year on the job. I think the first year on the job is one of the toughest for students. So this transition, I think, should be better, collaborated with the industry. So that's how I say. In the past, there was a complete separation between industry and academia. Now, IDC always aspired to be very interactive with the industry. I think it's just going to be more collaborations, more ways to interact, I would say. So this is one thing I think the future of learning and learning is always a challenge. That's the amazing thing that strikes me every year. It's always a challenge for a person to learn a new thing.
Right.
And that's not something that technology ever really solved. It's like really the ability to really grasp and really understand deeply all kind of complicated ideas. It's not enough just to see a movie.
Sure.
So in that respect, this challenge of learning will always be here. I don't think it's ever going to disappear. And I think that university would probably find new and exciting ways to do it, but they would still be here. Plus, another thing that is beautiful about academia, that it doesn't have business interests in the way the private sector is. Like it's clean, and you can do research and you can actually draw conclusions that are not just relevant to a certain company. So I think that's actually something that is very valuable.
To finish up this very insightful conversation with you, so first of all, thank you very much already now, let's say you can go back, I don't know how many years, but let's say to your 17, 18-year-old Yael, who is now at the crossroad of like deciding of where to go. What is your biggest advice you could give to these students that like are now considering? And please don't give me the idea of like come to my class because this is too obvious. But what would you recommend them? What is your advice that you would give them full-heartedly?
Okay. First, I would just make it a bit longer, not 17, 18. In Israel, we have the army, so
okay, so between 17 and 25.
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge for any person, any young person, is to find what he or she is good at and what he or she is passionate about. I think that's the hardest thing to find. And I think when you're very young, you choose your majors or whatever you study in university many times not based on that. You don't know, you're not able to understand exactly what are these different disciplines. So you don't really know. And sometimes you choose basically on the advice of your parents or whatever counts as good living. And it's not necessarily what is actually good for you to do later. And in a way, there's no. I do not have a good way to overcome the fact that you need to learn who you are.
Yes.
And basically, my advice is to study whatever makes you excited. Invest in your studies. I do believe, I'm a big believer in education,
Yes.
no matter which topic. I mean, I don't think you should, necessarily be an economist, even though I'm a very passionate economist. I don't think it's for everybody at all.
There's many degrees.
There's many degrees. You can be a psychology major and literature major and history major and, so many things. By the way, I also feel that the high tech actually, with all this knowledge, opened up a lot of professions that were not so lucrative in the past. For instance, did you know that linguistics is very important today for the high-tech industry? And
since Corona, especially.
Really, since Corona, I think even before, because, all these, search words and all these things, it's actually really, really important. So linguistics, which in the past, when I was studying English literature, I had a lot of friends doing linguistics in the, in the, how do you say it? Not social science, the other sciences, human sciences? I forgot in Hebrew. It's like Madei HaRuach. I forgot how to say it in English. Okay, I will remember shortly, hopefully. Anyway, so it was not something that's considered lucrative at all. And today it is.
Yes.
So that's why, and you don't even know which profession is going to develop. I think we're in the midst of the fourth industrial revolution.
Yes.
We have so many things going to change anyway. There are going to be so many new professions anyway. So what you really need to know is to learn how to learn. So I think that's the most important thing. So go and study whatever you're passionate about, and try to learn how to learn the best, because in your career you will need to learn over and over again. I agree with you that it's lifelong learning. I don't know if all of them are in the university or in other places, but absolutely the most important skill you can give yourself is the ability to learn and to be open to new ideas and how to use them. So and my other advice for students get so stressed. I cannot see it. It's like
the grade. Well, that's what matters.
It breaks my heart, really. It's like so first they're stressed about grades, and all my students know I hate grades, because what I don't like about grades is that grades actually incentivize you to always be perfect. And I think in order to really succeed in the world, you have to be willing to make mistakes.
Right.
But we punish our students for mistakes. I don't like that. I think it's wrong. But I don't have a better way to incentivize them to study.
Right.
Because whenever we give them something without grade, they do not study. So that's a problem.
Right.
But don't stress about grade, students. Try your best. And if you didn't succeed in your grade, don't worry about it too much. It doesn't say you're stupid. It doesn't say you're not good. It just said that you did not perform well in a specific hour of your life, in a specific question that you were given, and that's it. And, you just need to redo it again or whatever, but don't feel so stressed about it. I cannot see the stress. By the way, I was a very stressed student. That's why I'm like very
so you can
identified.
Associate. Well, that's very refreshing to hear. I wish I knew that, back in the days, but it's good to hear it at least now. So thank you very much for this insightful conversation, for this podcast today. I really appreciate your time. If you're a student and you're a listener and you liked this conversation and you felt it was insightful and you're interested in a degree in business administration and economics at the Reichman University, make sure you check out the link in the description below. You will find there everything you need to know. If you want to come to an open day here in Herzliya, you're more than welcome to join. And if you enjoyed this conversation, make sure to subscribe to this podcast so you will hear more interesting students. You will hear other alumnus, you will hear faculty members, you will hear other lecturers and students. So make sure you subscribe. Thank you very much for listening today. For everybody who's watching, thank you for watching. And I hope to see you and hear you in the next episode. Have a great day.
Thank you so much, Cédric, for having me in this podcast.